Many have dismissed the Menendez brothers as a case of the poor little rich boys. Yet there are countless wealthy kids with a lot of issues who do not go on to kill their parents, even when faced with being removed from the inheritance. The Menendez brothers is not a story about greed. It is a story about wiring. For those of you who don't know, Lyle and Eric Menendez are American brothers who were convicted of killing their parents in 1996. They stated the murders were self-defense after years of SA and other forms of abuse at the hands of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. Investigating the why behind murder does not condone murder. It is about understanding the root causes in hopes of future prevention. I believe the Menendez brothers were absolutely telling the truth about what happened to them in their childhood, and that their behaviors were a direct response to chronic terror due to past countless boundary violations. When you're growing up in a childhood home, your family is your entire world. Especially in the last 6 decades where we lack community more than ever. Families are a lot more isolated in their little units. So your family is your entire world, and then when you eventually go out into the world becomes your family. In the sense that you project the system that you came from onto subsequent systems. You see the world through the eyes of the system you were raised in. And in all family systems, we learn rules. We learn what it means to exist and survive by these rules. And Lyle and Eric learned that no matter what goes on behind closed doors, you keep up with lies in public, and that you can't survive without money. And their father, Jose, had all the money. And when you have a father who is a larger-than-life person like Jose Menendez, going against your father feels like going against God. The brothers stated that they killed their parents out of fear for their lives after a lifetime of abuse, especially SA at the hands of their father, who was described as sadistic. Individuals who go on to commit homicide have at least one parental figure in their family system who presents with a split or dual identity, either due to substance abuse or mental illness, and Jose Menendez was at least 2 people. The big shot music exec with the Beverly Hills mansion and the beauty pageant wife, and the disturbed little boy who is driven by his own past traumas to become all-powerful. Unfortunately, his core wounds came out in severely dysfunctional ways, taken out mainly on his children, and everything to Jose became an object who he enjoyed making submit. Clearly, Jose learned this predator-prey dynamic early in his life. It became a fetish for him, only he swapped roles so he would always be in the all-dominant position. His children came to represent the more vulnerable parts of him that he ultimately couldn't stand. That's the underbelly of someone like Jose Menendez. But the image-focused part wanted to see his son succeed to make him look good. Roy Rosello recently claimed that he was assaulted by Jose when he was 14, that Jose drugged and SA'd him during a visit to the Menendez household in New Jersey. People responded to this confession saying that he just wanted to remain relevant. Who makes up a story like this to stay relevant? Even prosecutor David Kahn said in 1999, "I remember hearing an allegation that Jose Menendez molested someone in Menudo," Roy Rosello's band. Meanwhile, their mother Kitty was described as an enabling, mentally unstable alcoholic who was also violent towards the brothers and who turned a blind eye to their abuse. The brothers' cousin Andy Cano testified that Eric confided as a child that he had been SA'd by his father. Another cousin of the brothers, Diane Molin, stated on the stand that she went to Kitty and told about Jose's abuse towards Lyle as a child, and she assumed that Kitty would just take care of it. And then, of course, there was the physical evidence the defense presented. A photograph of Lyle and Eric's parts, allegedly taken by their father when they were children. Eric testified a couple of nights before the week of the killings that he told his brother Lyle about the SA at the hands of his father. This led to Lyle and Eric confronting their parents. The brothers testified that their father then threatened to kill them if they did not keep the abuse a secret. This response by abusers, by the way, is common. Yes, murder is the most serious boundary violation a person can commit. So how did they get there? From what we know about the early lives of people who kill, major boundary violations likely occurred in the earliest parts of their life. We need to get better at recognizing early cries for help. When children lie, steal, cheat, break laws, or defy authority, it does not mean they are inherently bad or genetically psychopathic. These behaviors are often signs of serious boundary violations that are occurring at home. Yet once they turn 18, society slaps a label on them: sociopathic, psychopathic, or a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder, treating these behaviors as if they're set in stone. Why does turning the magical biological age 18 suddenly define their entire future with a permanent label? Sigmund Freud had once admitted that many of his most disturbed patients had been SA'd at the hands of their father. Unfortunately, he later recanted the statement due to the backlash of his colleagues. To this day, the field of psychology frequently fails to recognize the profound impact of childhood SA on individuals, particularly in terms of the formation of one's identity, lasting shame, and the enduring internal narratives of disempowerment. Do you know how difficult it is for a male child to admit SA? Even to this day, it was almost unheard of back in the 80s and 90s due to the level of shame and humiliation involved. Chronic terror in childhood fuels subsequent recurrent acts of violence by fostering perpetual feelings of threat, endangerment, or disrespect, symptoms prevalent in various neuropsychiatric disorders. Turns out the human brain isn't as resilient as commonly thought. Research also reveals that the most severely disciplined individuals often exhibit the highest levels of aggression. Sadly, families of offenders would prefer their children to face death rather than disclose the traumas suffered in their childhood behind closed doors. And in the end, most offenders themselves choose death over exposing their abusive parents. This case actually has a lot of parallels to the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case. The children in both situations lived in worlds made up of fantasy and fiction, where maintaining a false public image was equivalent to survival. And that's what they lived by. Keep up the lie or else. The relentless pressure to uphold a false image, combined with the abuse they endured, created a psychological pressure cooker, ultimately culminating in their extreme behaviors. In both cases, it became impossible to simultaneously keep up the lie and survive in the same world as your oppressor. The decision to remove their parents represented a desperate quest for freedom from a life of repression, abuse, and falsehood. The pervasive abuse was compounded by the family's fixation on maintaining the flawless public image. This facade meant that the brothers' emotional needs were masked by material wealth, which became equated with emotional security and identity. The brothers therefore learned to manage their internal struggles through financial means, rather than emotional expression, leading to a profound distortion in their understanding of emotional regulation, which was entangled with money. Psychological development with these two was therefore completely stunted, and double parricide seemed to be the only solution to an emotional crescendo that Lyle and Eric did not have the emotional tools to comprehend. A final act that they believed would be the ultimate payoff, complete freedom. In 2017, Gypsy Rose Blanchard told 2020 that she felt freer in prison than she did living at home with her mother. I've often wondered if there was a time when Lyle and Eric felt this way too.